Hello nerds and welcome back to Ravenwin Gargoyle Streams. I am your host Brandon and I am super excited to bring to you my Cloud X Soldier Commander deck. They said the perfect one couldn't be built, but I did it. Here we go. Cloud X Soldier, 2 colorless, 1 mountain, 1 forest, and 1 plains for a legendary creature human soldier mercenary with haste, and when it enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to it. Whenever Cloud attacks, draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then if Cloud has power 7 or greater, create 2 treasure tokens. Not bad. I'm a huge Voltron player and I love this archetypal playstyle, and Cloud not only draws you cards, but it gives you resources for when he gets popped. So fantastic, and it gives you access to removal, a lot of fast other aggro creatures in red, and then you can ramp. So let's see how all these different colors play out and what we can do to flood the board and create power instead of just going tall. One of Voltron's biggest problems is the fact that it gets so tall, but you can't recover from investing so much resources in getting one creature really big. So the idea that I have with this deck is to ensure that we had some covering, right? We're not talking about alternate win cons of collecting artifacts and doing any of that. The goal is still to go smash face. You can get some commander damage in, finish somebody off, and then you gotta bear down and figure it out if you're keep your head on a swivel like Ron Burgundy. Alright? So we need to add some other quality creatures that are gonna help us create tokens so that we can use those creatures to put our awesome equipments and trigger all the cool effects. And then it actually goes well with Tifa as well and some of the stuff she does. We'll get to that. So my first ad, Chorizo, the Shattered Blade, 2 colorless, 1 mountain and a forest. Legendary creature, Snake Samurai, and whenever an aura equipment enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 red spirit token with menace. And at the beginning of your end step, put a 1/1 counter on each modified creature you control. So as you can imagine, we're gonna try to make as many creatures as we can and have them be modified if possible. Next, we have Mr. Barrett, the badass himself, the Avalanche Leader. For 2 colorless, a mountain and a forest. Legendary creature, human rebel with reach, which is nice. Whenever an equipment you control enters, create a 2/2 red wool token, creature token. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to target rebel you control, which is nice. So you can pump up Barrett, you can pump up all the rebel tokens that he makes, and I'm sure we could in the future look for more rebels, but I didn't really do that. I'm just going for volume here. Next, Reese. A nice early game start off here. I'll either pay 1 forest or a plains. For a few colorless and a forest or a plains, you can start off the party by putting a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play, which seems like a big startup cost. But much like Krenko Mob Boss, once you get this thing going, you can start to add a lot of creature tokens in the long run, and really what he wants to do is play with all these other token generators. So the best value comes from the 4 colorless and either 2 plains or 2 forests, and you tap them, and for each creature token you control, put a token into play that's a copy of that creature to get a body on the board early that could then have some sort of sword or some other equipment to benefit us later. Next, we have one of my favorites, Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. I didn't realize how good this variant of Krenko was until the Chorizo EDH deck during the Neon Dynasty of Kamigawa, to see the interaction when you equip this guy, get him tall, get him big. It's a nice relationship where not only are you dealing a bunch of damage, but you're creating a bunch of tokens for yourself, and you just continually get bigger as well. So I love this guy. Great include. Should do well for us. And the classic Krenko Mob Boss OG himself. Everybody knows what he does. I'm not gonna explain it. Stand by. We got SRAM Senior Edificer, a legendary creature dwarf advisor. Whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. So we need as much card draw as we can get. One of the new cards from the set, Jumbo Cactar. For 5 colorless and 2 forests, we got the 10,000 Needles, probably one of the most overpowered abilities in the whole game. Whenever this creature attacks, it gets 9,999 until end of turn. That's over 9,000 if y'all were paying attention. Vegeta is shaking in his boots. Next we have Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. Little angel action up in there. So we got 4 colorless, a mountain, and 2 plains. She has flying first strike, and if a source would deal damage to an opponent, and conversely, if you are going to get attacked, it's halved, which is rounded up, but it's just trying to make sure that you can't get down to 0. We got Aurelia, the War Leader, another costly angel, but 2 colorless, 2 mountains, and 2 plains. Legendary creature angel. She has flying, vigilance, and haste, and whenever she attacks, for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control, and there's an additional combat phase. Now we could have thrown other things in here like enchantments and a couple other different spells that can accomplish this, but I love having the 3/4 body, being able to equip her up and give her extra combats and have Cloud and all the other characters that we're going to get into. Next we have Sigardi, a host of Heron, for 2 colorless, a forest, and 2 plains, and she is a legendary creature angel with flying and hexproof, which is so nice. You don't have to worry about her getting sniped out. She's just going to fall to board wipes, right? She brings the ability to resist falling to edicts. You'll notice if this is the first time you're playing Voltron, or if you played against it, it folds to board wipes, targeted removal, or edict effects. It actually hates that because a lot of the equipments and things that go onto your Voltron creatures, your commander specifically, you are trying to avoid targeting, but when edicts come into play, they don't care about targeting. They just care about body for body, and usually it's a sacrifice of one creature for the opponent's creature to go down, but when those oppressive board wipe like edicts come down where your opponent sacrifices all permanents of a certain color or all creatures with power exit, I thought that this would be a nice little addition to help you win more. It's not going to help you come back, it's just going to keep Cloud around, and that was the idea of this deck, is to cut down on the interaction from the opponent's side. And this is the first time I've ever taken Voltron to the point where I'm trying to leverage out the value of my turns and not have to really worry too much about what my opponent's going to do on their turn. Now, when I don't have my plays all set up, of course, I'm still at the mercy of whatever kind of instant or trickery they have in their hands, but at least the goal is to make it a little bit more consistent to get your big turn all lined up, not in a crater hoof behemoth fashion or anything like that, but just essentially to try to provide as much limited interaction on your opponent's side. So she provides that. Now, truth be told, I bought the pre-con. The only pack that I had purchased, I was able to pull Cloud Midgar Mercenary, probably the best pull of a card that I've had in a long time. For 2 planes, he is a human soldier mercenary, and when he enters, you can search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then shuffle. As long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So not only does he give you a little tutor, but he also can give you a Panharmonicon effect. And speaking of small creatures that only cost 2 plain, we got Pure Steel Paladin. The ability to, for 0 mana, equipment can be moved around from different creatures as long as you have 3 or more artifacts is extremely valuable. And much like Lightning Greaves, which is a spoiler alert, another card that we're going to get into later, being able to shift equipment around for different actions throughout your turn is extremely valuable. So whenever an equipment you control enters the battlefield, we also have more card draw. So this is fantastic. You're starting to see the engine here of the card draw. What you have to do when you're not running blue, all of the additional spells that you can directly draw cards from, is you need to have a lot of on-play trigger effects, especially in white, and there's so many on-play effects that allow you to draw cards related to artifacts, so we really are leaning into this as well. We have Miss Akiri, Fearless Voyager. For 1 colorless, 1 mountain, and 1 plains, we have a core warrior, and whenever you attack a player with 1 or more equipped creatures, draw a card. More card draw. Revolving around equipment being equipped. And this is the kicker right here. This is the nice one. I think it's underrated. So to pay 1 plains, you may unattach an equipment from a creature you control. Just think about the combo if the previous creature was out. If you do, tap that creature and it gains indestructible invisible until end of turn. You could theoretically just constantly detach and reattach, especially if you can give it flash. It'd be fantastic because then you can basically make your whole side of the field indestructible, and then you can do the Mario POW button where the rest of your opponents have to deal with the wrath of a board wipe, but you really don't. Next, you notice this mana curve so far has been pretty low to the ground. I would say it's sitting around a 3 or 4 cost for most cards, and then it really spikes up when we got some of the more impactful cards come out. But we got Kutzil, Malamute, Exemplar for a colorless, a forest, and a plains. It is a legendary creature cat warrior, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is going to be fantastic for your draw, and as you equip your creatures, it tends to raise their power up a little bit more, and we have multiple equipments that are just caring about the power and not as much about the toughness. So we have ways of pulling off that secondary effect, but we're running it not only for a body with a decent profile at 3/3, but the main reason is having that limited interaction of your opponents. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. We're going to try to lean on it as much as we can throughout the game, and these are the pieces that you should escort and try to prioritize keeping. Proof, Shroud, any kind of sword against some removal color like black or white or red if you have it, because this ability is just so strong in my opinion when you're running Voltron. Next, we have Red Proud Warrior for 1 colorless, 1 mountain, and 1 forest. It is a legendary creature beast warrior with vigilance, trample, and other modified creatures you control have vigilance and trample. When red enters the battlefield, return target aura or equipment card from your graveyard to hand. So he's got a little bit of recursion too, and a decent body on him. I like the 3/3 profile. He can get pretty big pretty quick. Next, super pumped for this. Love Sephiroth. Sephiroth Fallen Hero for 3 colorless, a mountain, and a plain. It's a legendary creature, human avatar soldier. Whenever Sephiroth attacks, you may put a cell counter on target creature until end of turn. Each modified creature you control has a base power and toughness of 7/5, and also you can pay 3, sacrifice a modified creature, and return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. Decent way to get him out. I don't know how many times I'm going to be needing to sacrifice. Maybe if I don't have much of the plays, I would think about doing the reunion ability, but most times we'll just get Sephiroth out there, and then maybe he can help close the turn, kind of like a pump anthem effect. But mostly he just looks cool and he's awesome. Next, we have Mr. Sid, Free Flyer Pilot for 1 colorless and a plains, legendary creature, human warrior pilot. Equipment and vehicle spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's a tongue twister. This is going to cut down on our equipment costs, which helps us get our swords and all other equipments that we love out quicker. And also he's got the jump effect. So during your turn, Sid has flying. This is fantastic because if you notice, we really don't have too much flyers so far, which is a big problem. Falls easily to any kind of bird related creatures or dragons, and there's a lot of those out there. A lot of people like to slot those in and run them or give their creatures flying, and then that becomes troublesome if you can't stop something like an Atraxa or something of that profile. So it's nice to have some availability there. And also for 2 and activate them, return target equipment or a vehicle card from your graveyard to your hand. Now we don't have too many vehicles, if any, in here, but just the ability to scoop up some equipments, because those swords are going to get targeted. They're going to get all sort of disenchants or corrosion grip, whatever the opponents want to throw at them. They know that those things can't stick around, and if they do, it'll be bad for them. So you're just going to have to constantly try to recur these things, dig them back up, and having Sid there, even as a low early gameplay, that's valuable, and then later you're still happy to see him. I love these types of cards. Now, super excited about this next card right here. Miss Tifa, Martial Artist for a colorless, a mountain, a forest, and a plains. She is a legendary creature human monk with the melee ability, so she cares about attacking multiple opponents during combat. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control with power 7 or greater, shouldn't be too hard to set up, or greater, deal combat damage to a player, untap all creatures you control. If it's the first combat phase of your turn, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. This ruling gets complicated. I'm not going to get into it right here, but just know that you have to sequence, especially if you got a Rulia out and you want to go in and swing and get the activation from her. You basically want to set off your attack so that Tifa's the first one and you claim her ability first. Next, we're getting into some equipment. We got a Basilisk collar for 1 colorless, and this is fantastic because it's going to give your creatures death touch and lifelink. So not only do you have something to actually knock your opponent's creatures down a peg, especially big commanders, those Atraxa types, or even bigger than that, a Vorinclex body, you have your little tokens that we're making. You can throw one of these equipments on there, give it death touch and lifelink. You could double up and give it a sword or some other equipment as well, and this really combos out nicely to not only get your life total back up, but also have a valid threat or a valid blocker on the board. I love Basilisk. This is a fantastic card, but things get really complicated, so I'm kind of reluctant to add it in, but I know it's just too good in this deck. We got the Helm of the Host. So for 4 colorless, it's a legendary artifact equipment, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary. If the equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste. You've noticed we got a decent amount of legendary creatures running around, and this thing can duplicate them and give them haste, which gives you more triggers. So that could be used on both variants of Cloud, Tifa, everybody that we just went through, and I believe most of them have the enter the battlefield effect, so that's nice. Mirror Shield for 2 colorless to get it out, and then it's going to be a 2 equip cost. The equipped creature gets +0, +2, and has hexproof, and whenever the creature with death touch block or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy that creature. Ironic that I was just talking about Basilisk Collar, but honestly this thing is a unicorn. I don't see many cards in Magic the Gathering that specifically interact with death touch, and it's just nice to have an answer for that. And on top of that, anytime you can give hexproof and keep your big players, specifically creatures you want to have hang around longer, so you can get pump effects, token creation attacks, all sorts of different things. Even Sigardia with added protection to pillow fort a little bit. You really need to stack and have these things available, and that's why you got to throw a redundant amount of them in there, because you can't rely on just drawing 1 or 2, because you got to chalk about 1 or 2 getting destroyed by opponents. Then you have mass board wipe removal of equipments and artifacts that could set you back, so I like to throw at least 4 different forms of hexproof or shroud or whatever I need to do to try to keep my commander and your most prevalent threats on the board around longer. Interesting art, but we have the Swiftfoot boots. I'm sure you're used to seeing the different art on them, and this is just gonna, very simple card, give it a haste and hexproof, and it's an equip cost of 1, so the price is right, it does the job. And if something doesn't have haste, which there's quite a bit so far that have had it, this is going to help it get on board and be able to deliver a blow very quickly. Alright, we got more protection here for 2 colorless. It's an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has haste and shroud. And the best part is an equip cost of 0. So the unfortunate part about this card is the fact that if you get this late, it might not be as effective. It's kind of annoying to throw on shroud, because unless you have enchantments or those creatures like the Pure Steel Paladin that's going to make it 0 equip cost, moving all this equipment cost and equipping other creatures just to get this thing off whenever you want to add some of the sword or whatever you pull later can be a real nightmare, right? So I would recommend just taking this, stick it on one of your creatures like Krenko or somebody that you want to cause some disruption, a distraction technique. Just have some creature present a valid threat that's not the main threat, but your opponents have to answer, and unless they got board wipes, they're gonna have to deal with that, and they're gonna be distracted the fact that you got Lightning Greaves going. Or early game, you can throw this on Cloud, keep them safe, try to avoid that targeted removal, because it really seems, especially in the casual meta, everybody's packing multiple instant speed removal, destruction, or exile spells. So the worst, to be honest, is mass exile spells or mass destruction of artifacts or creatures for this deck, and I'm not gonna lie, this deck would just fold to multiple rounds of that. I can't handle that. It's not built for that. This is a casual deck we're talking through, but it has extremely high potential if you can safeguard it and get a little bit lucky and not having to go through a lot of opponents that have a lot of black cards that want cards to be constantly dead and thrown into the yard. Hopefully your matchup just works for you and you got somebody trying to stall and you can out aggro them and get some of those cards that stop your opponents from interacting with with you and having answers at instant speed and really just surprise them and get on top of them. But I could see this deck being a little bit gimmicky in the sense that all opponents with Voltron understand that you need to eliminate the threat first, do some sort of thing to prevent them from dealing damage to you, and if possible, just delete all of those threats at the same time. But that's why we're going so heavy into the anti-targeting cards, things with hexproof and shroud keyword. Speaking of that, we have Champion Sound, probably one of my favorite ones of all this. So 3 colorless, it's an artifact equipment, and not only does it pump them, it gets them +2/+2, which is nice, but as long as it's legendary, which most of our cards are, it has hexproof. So it's going to get them a little bit closer, Cloud specifically, to that 7 power requirement and get them in a good position to be able to get all those extra effects to trigger. Next we have Skull Clamp. For most people, this is a cut in this pre-con, but I saw it and said this is your way to get back into games when you get bored with. When someone's not targeting this type of equipment, you can use this to make your smaller tokens, draw an answer, get another creature that can make more tokens, and it can really just go wild on the draw front. This is probably the best draw source in the deck, and if you can get the engine going, it's so easy to just draw 20 cards in a turn and really get going on things. And not only does it do that, but it can be thrown on Cloud early, and you got a little consolation prize. You don't feel too bad about him getting blown up if what you did was able to contribute to getting him to the right power. So not only did he get his attack in to draw your cards, but he made you treasure tokens, and then you're getting 2 cards in hand. So you took out my commander, I get seemingly no added commander tax cost added on, and I have more cards in hand, and he can just come out again next turn. Nobody really wants to drop the overall mana cost. They want to use that mana they would have had to do other things, but at least it makes you feel a little bit better about yourself compared to other Voltron commanders where they just get blown up and you just sit there going, oh, I guess I'm just gonna watch the table play until I can get set up again, and hopefully I don't die in the process. I like little tweaks like that. Speaking of that, we got the Reaver Cleaver. For 2 colorless and a mountain, we have a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample. That's the keyword we want. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, create that many treasure tokens. The fact that it can trigger on a planeswalker is fantastic. Most times you're going to give Cloud trample, and you're going to have a couple other creatures that you're going to want to pump up on the board and give them trample, and I like this. We have a lot of creatures getting haste, a lot of creatures getting trample, a lot of creatures getting hexproof. So we have some redundancy in place to actually deliver the damage. And then once you start talking about copying and cloning, the power scale of this deck is actually pretty high. Now we're assuming that our opponents aren't going to interact with us because we're going to try to pillow fort a little bit and make it hard for them to do that. But this is one of those early game cards that could affect the whole rest of the game. If you can get this early and get 1 successful Cloud attack where this is equipped on, this is not only going to get you the 2 treasure tokens from Cloud, but also all the power that he has. That's really good. Love Reaver Cleaver. I like to think that's Krenko with his little act. Alright, Sword of the Animist. This is one of my favorite equipments of all time because, as we know, for white and red, which most of the cards in this deck are, it really doesn't ramp too well. We got access to green. I didn't really go too crazy on it because I do have a few equipments that are going to help you dig, filter, and get to those lands. And plus we're going to draw. So we got a lot of way getting land out there. But the fact that it's not only boosting you towards your goal of getting to the 7 power for Cloud, and then you also get to go ahead and just tutor out your basic land that you have, that's nice too. Now, truth be told, we didn't jam this thing full of basic lands, but we got enough for it to make an impact. And if you get one of these kind of tutors for lands early and you can abuse it for 3 or 4 turns straight, I've noticed you can be pretty good for the most part. Unless you encounter some sort of land destruction, you're gonna be alright. So I love this card. We have the Conform or Shotokan. For 2 colorless, it's a legendary artifact equipment, and whenever this creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. If that creature has greater power than this creature, put a number of +1/+1 counters on this creature to equal the difference. Think about that. The Maze of Ith on an equipment, and if you go into something that's way bigger than you get close to what it is, and the big thing that you were threatening didn't even get a chance to hit you. So you're just basically walking up to the biggest, toughest guy and saying, I got you, I'm not afraid of you. Sitting there doing some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, effectively what the creature's doing, but it's all done through this shuriken. So love this. At first I thought, a little unnecessary, situational. How many times are they gonna have those big Vorinclex type caliber creatures out? But a lot of people like to throw at least 3 or 4, maybe even more than that, just big closer creatures. And if they're there, to be able to account for those things so that you're forcing some chump blocking. And a lot of times I've noticed with Voltron, similar thing to sports, you got somebody 1v1, all they gotta do is beat one person, but that one person there is just sometimes enough to stop you from getting to the promised land. But when you got something like this, it's a nice little combat trick that not only boosts you and buffs you, but it also just can seal the deal. This is effectively evasion and a strengthening equipment all in one, and it's situational. So you can threaten people with the ability to do this. They have to respect that this is on the field. So I love this equipment. Pick up a few more of these before they become $1 million. Speaking of equipment that's going to become $1 million after this set rotates up. Wrecking Ball Arm. It is a legendary artifact, legendary equipment, and equipped creature has base power of toughness 7/7. See what they did there with the Final Fantasy? And can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And then just like the Blackblade Reforged, equipped legendary creature has pay only 3 if legendary, so that's nice. And it's kind of costly if you want to just throw this on a token, but ideally this is designed to go on Cloud or another like Barrett, one of those characters, Tifa, and get them sitting at a toughness of 7/7. And then we got the Sephiroth card that we already previewed that does pretty much the same effect, where he's trying to pump up the base power, which is nice because then you can expand on that with all the other swords and other things we haven't even got to yet. But I absolutely love this card. And the underrated part, you get in a situation where you got very limited room for error on your opponent. If you had the Shuriken combined with this ball arm, not only can you tap down one of their bigger toughness creatures to stop you, but you can also stop mass chump blocking, which is another huge problem of Voltron. So I feel like when they sat down to design these cards in the deck, they said, how can we make Voltron more effective and give them a little bit more tools? You know, you nerds always talking about newer archetypes of card types. A lot of people say it needs more support. We got the support. We got the Voltron support. It's here. Let's go. Hopefully more to come. So my favorite type of deck, the honest working man's Voltron style deck, and I love the fact that we have all these options now, and I really want to get a couple of these too. I think they're already rising in price, so I gotta act quick if I'm going to do that. Now, I made some cuts. You guys have been seeing some of the Final Fantasy characters included. I've cut a bunch. I literally threw this in just because I love this guy, and I don't really understand him yet, but here we go. Colossus Hammer. So it's got the cat. I still don't know how to pronounce his name or what he's all about, and I haven't gotten to that part in the game, but I'm sure I'll love it, and he's awesome. And you know what else is awesome? Giving Cloud 10/10 and having this equipped for free. This would really suck and brick you up if you don't have any kind of cost, negation, or treasures on board to get this equipped. So this is kind of a liability. I actually feel like this is a cute card, and for those of you that don't understand what that reference means, it goes along to the theme of being in magical Christmas land, where you have all these variables set up for your success and everything's going to go well for you, and you're never going to get mana screwed or have all your treasures vandal blasted or other bad malicious land destruction. It's just everything's gonna go great, and then every time you see this card, it's gonna result in a creature being 10/10 more, and you're happy, and barely anything else flying, so who cares about that? I think that's a naive way of looking about it. I think honestly, if this is gonna be a brick in 50% of your hands and you get it early, it can give you the trigger for when you want to draw, which is nice. And if you can get it equipped, it'd be nice. But think about it, if you don't have the treasures on board and it's not late game, these commander games don't last too long, being able to spend a turn spending a bunch of mana to equip this is just kind of irresponsible. But love it, love the art. 1v1, I'm sure this thing's gonna be an MVP, but in a pod, people are gonna see you with this threat on board. It's just gonna get removed or bounced, and then you're gonna have to play it out. Played with this card before, and I just had to throw it in because I love this cat, and I'm not gonna cut this. So I've never not been happy to draw a Batter Skull. Every time I drew this thing, it became a blocker for me that got me some life, or I equipped it up and it became a real big problem, or I had the built-in evasion of paying 3 colorless to throw it back to my hand, and and the fact that it's got that 5 equip cost, I can deal with that. 8 makes me sad. 5, I can deal with that. I can still throw a creature down, I can throw more equipment down, and I can justify dealing a little bit in the short term when it comes to paying 5 to get it out and then 5 to equip, whereas paying 1 to get it out and then paying 8 every time a creature dies or you don't have some sort of reducing cost or bust, that this is fine. Trust me, bro. Alright, Hammer of Nazan. This is one of my favorite equipments of all time. I'm gonna keep saying that a lot because we haven't even really got to a lot of them yet. For 4 colorless, it's a legendary artifact, and whenever Hammer of Nazan or another equipment enters a battlefield under your control, you may attach equipment to target creature you control. We can deal with that hammer we were talking about when this thing's around, and a few other things we got going on, but we won't always have this, and that's the problem. But it is very nice when we do, because equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has indestructible, and that's a 4 equip cost. It's a great card, absolutely love it, but we have to address this. I have lost more powerful creatures to mass exile or targeted exile or any kind of edict sacrificial effects that your opponents make you do in the color black, and it's a problem to think that indestructible is just gonna keep you around, because in Commander people splash in white all the time, and they definitely splash in black, and they're both, black is starting to get access to some exile creature. Not only does it kill creatures, black is probably the best color in the game. Getting a little OP. Having indestructible is nice, especially against red. All the other OP colors that are just gonna bounce it, exile it, or destroy it, or sacrifice, not destroy, are gonna make you sad. And that's all I got to say about that. Black Blade for 4. Another one of my favorite value equipments. 2 colors to get down, and the equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. And there's that nice reduction here. Equip legendary creature bonus for 3 colorless. Or if it's one of Krenko's peons, you just gotta pay the 7 colorless and deal with that sadness. Great card. It scales to your game. Those are the ones that I love to see. If you have access to something early and it's great and affordable and it gets you going, even if it only pumps you 3, right? Because you're going to need 3 to equip that. That's enough to get you going. And then as you go later in the game, if you're blessed to make it 10, 15 turns into a game where there's a bunch of mana floating around, you got a real big problem for your opponents. So I love this card. Speaking of great swords, spears, looks like a sword. Shadow Spear. It is a 1-drop to get down, colorless, legendary artifact equipment, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. Here's the kicker. To pay 1, permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. For a 2 equip cost to have access to all of this, easily one of the best equipments in the game in my opinion. Conqueror's Flail. This is another one of those closer equipments, but if you're in a good position already, it is a win more card. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control, which is not that hard. And as long as this equipment is attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Kind of that Teferi effect. Grand Abolisher, probably could have thrown him, or if I want more of that and I find that that effect is really just helping me close out games, I'll try to add a little bit more. I believe there's another Naya cat as well. I honestly haven't played this card too much. When it was in the deck, I saw it inspired me to add more of these types of effects with some of the other creatures you've already seen. We'll definitely have some gameplay coming up soon. I'll be getting some games tomorrow. That'll be fun. The classic, some ramp. Soul Ring, a 1-drop colorless for 2, just timeless. And I like this ring. It looks pretty. Chromatic Lantern. It's a 3 colorless spell artifact, and lands you control have add 1 mana of any color. So it's a good mana fixer, and it gives you 1 on its own. So it's got this nice ability to help you get the colors you need, and so far I've noticed it leans a little bit more plains heavy, but it is nice to be able to have that versatility and manipulation of your resources. Everybody knows in Magic the Gathering, getting mana screwed or just not having the right color fixing in a 3+ color deck is just miserable. Arcane Signet. There you go. We can have any of those colors in the commander's identity, so we'll get our mountain, forest, or plains, and we're off to the races. Now, Thought Vessel. This is a 2-drop colorless artifact, and it's providing us with no maximum hand size, and it gives you a color. This is big sad if you lose it. If opponents see this, they usually let this sit around early in the first couple turns, and then when they see you sitting on a big hand, they'll pop this and they'll say, okay, better play as much as you can out of your hand before they all go away. But great card. More ramp. I believe I added in Kodamas Reach because it's my favorite ramp green spell, I believe. Classic at least. Search the library for up to 2 basics, reveal them, and then put one on a battlefield tap and the other in your hand. Self-explanatory. And the next, same concept. 2 basics, reveal those cards. You're searching tutor for lands, 1 tap, the other in your hand, and shuffle. Now here is one of my favorite removal spells of all time. Frozen Grip. Only until you have one of these remove something you love at split-second speed will you realize how fantastic this is, and how green is pretty crazy that it has access to a lot of power and removal of things that are impactful in the game. Frozen Grip, fantastic. Excited to bust this thing out and trump somebody trying to counter me. Very nice. Until Sonic comes around, and I don't know if any of you saw that, where everything's gonna have split second. Little concerned about that. Smothering Tide, 3 colorless and a plains, an enchantment, one of the only enchantments in this deck. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 colorless. If that player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with activate, sacrifice this artifact, and add 1 mana of any color. Treasures are all around now. This was when they were first starting to come out. This is my first Smothering Tide, and I'm excited to smother my opponents, respectfully. Sigarda's Aid for 1 plains. It's another enchantment, and you may cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash. And whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. So I love this. All you have to do is pay the casting costs. You can do it on your opponent's turn. It gives you a way to interact. This is big sad if they pop this. You're excited to have this capability. They're gonna see this and they're gonna want to remove it. But guess what? If you're on your draw, if you're stocking up the cards in your hand, and you got things like Thought Vessels, a bunch of other really key equipments we already covered, your opponent's got to start making choices, or they got to team up together to take you down and gang tackle you. Speaking of enchantments that are fantastic in this deck, we got a Lord of the Rings enchantment, Forge Anew. When Forge Anew enters the battlefield, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. As long as it's your turn, you may activate equip abilities anytime you can cast an instant. There you go, redundant effect. And you may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability during each of your turns. Not only is this helping you recur your destroyed things, we already talked about how that's just gonna happen if you're a Voltron player, you're just gonna have to accept that, right? But it's also aiding with the equip costs, and then also you can have that instant speed. This feels like a combination of a bunch of those other cards we were looking at all into one, and probably the best out of all the enchantments in the deck. Now, speaking about cards to make people big sad, this one came out in the Neon Dynasty Kamigawa, and it is a classic, and I love it. Farewell, 4 colorless and 2 plains. Choose 1 or more. Exile all artifacts, exile all creatures, exile all enchantments, and exile all graveyard. What if somebody was salty and they just threw this down, having no bearing on how the game was going to go themselves other than this one play? It is a huge responsibility to play this card. If you don't need to like screw everybody over on this, I wouldn't. It's kind of going to reset the whole game, and not only do the players running black have no way to go back in and get back in with the graveyard gone, but it just gets rid of all the progress you've done. And that's kind of what we were talking about with big pod games, where if you pack too much of these, or you're just a jerk and you really want to do all the effects just because you can, it makes this game not as good. But tactically, when you choose one, it is good. Maybe if you're going to lose, I could see you got to get back in the game, you got to do this. But if you're just doing it because you never had a shot and you have no plan to get back into it, which is some deck, that sucks real bad. Kind of a toxic card. Love the art, love what it does. It's just used responsibly, right? This one is a bit more classy in my opinion. Austere Command, 4 colorless, 2 plains. You gotta choose 2. So destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, and destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less, and destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. The reason why I like this card is it unfortunately forces you to make a choice. So you can either board wipe, you can do the bottom 2 choices, or you can do one tactically that will only affect your opponents, or at least will minimally impact you. And then let's say you didn't really really have a lot of your enchantments out at the time. You pick that one by default, and not only have you kind of wiped out your opponent's creatures, and then you've also gotten rid of some of their enchantments that they might be running. I would reckon you're probably never gonna choose artifacts, because look at all those cool artifacts we just went through. You want to destroy them all? Like, this is a self-destruct button. You are losing. You've been getting hated out. You're getting spot removal left and right. Cloud costs a million mana to get back on. You're like, you know what? I don't care. You know, this is my only defense. But there are those games, everybody knows, that's played some pods, where you're just sitting there waiting for a board wipe, and you are so happy to see this one, because as much as you do have to make a sacrifice with it, it does have all the tools you need to take care of the threats at hand. Sunforger, a colorless 3-drop artifact, but you will need your Boros for the effect. But just equipping it is a 3 equip cost, and it's gonna pump up Cloud to that 7 power that he needs, which is why it's in here. But there's the secondary effect. You can tutor your library for a red or white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost. So you've just paid, you gotta shuffle, you've just paid 2 mana to do something that should cost more, and will in most cases, and it's going to be impactful, and it's going to be interactive, and you're going to be able to have a strong creature on board. I love this card. The first time I was ever exposed to it, my mind was blown when I was going against, like, you get to do what? Well, in this deck, we're going to use it for defensive capabilities, not offensive. Of course, the +4/+0 is going to be offensive, but that's not why it's in here. It's predominantly in for the ability to save your board state against those terrible things like board wipes and things that are usually out of control. We'll talk more about that. Semester's End. Here's one of those targets that you can grab. It is a 3 colorless and 1 plains instant spell, and you can exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of the next end step, return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. Who knows? Could that come into play? I think it might. We got Ultimate Magic Holy for 2 colorless and a plains. It's an instant spell. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. If this spell was cast from exile, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn. Very nice. And it's got its foretell. I love foretelling. I feel like I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh or something, and I like that game too. But just to be able to put a card down, psych your opponent down. Unfortunately, after playing with opponents and play groups multiple times, they know what this is unless you purposely add in other ones, and we're not going to do that. We came with the deck. It does the purpose. You mostly are going to maybe hope to pull it and tutor it specifically with the equipment we were just talking about, and then just run it that way. But if you do roll it early, you're never really mad that this is in hand for your rainy day insurance policy. Speaking of rainy day insurance policies, the best one ever made. Cool art. When it came out in Dominaria, we had no idea how good it was. We just knew it was cool. Teferi's Protection, 2 colorless and a plains. It is an instant. Until your next turn, your life total can change, and you have protection, from everything. All permanents you control phase out. So for those of you that don't know, while they're phased out, they are treated as though they don't exist. They go on a nice little vacation, and they phase back in before you untap during your untap step. Exile Teferi's Protection. This is probably, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, this is the best white card in the game. This is extremely powerful. To give this to Cloud is fantastic, and this could change your whole match just by being able to evade certain destruction for a turn. Opponents a lot of times are not ready for the clapback from this. They think they've handled the threat. They think that you won't be able to recover, but there are multiple ways, as you can see, to stop this. Not only is it controlling your opponents on your turn, saying, excuse me, wait your turn, it is not your turn, rude, and then also just being able to interact at instant speed like this. This is fantastic. I have not done this yet, and I'm super stoked for it, because many times in Voltron, you just set things up. It's like you're playing solitaire, and you look at yourself all proud, and then a board wipe happens, and if you're not sitting there on an indestructible equipment, which even then, as we've seen with white, doesn't really matter too much, because they'll just exile you anyway, and then you're real big sad. This has an answer for that, and you gotta love having an answer. And one thing I love about Boros is it's having more answers lately. Now we have access to more cards. I like that. Next. Clever concealment. Interesting art. I'm excited to get to this in the game. So 2 colorless and 2 planes for convoke, so your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap counts for 1 colorless. Not super impactful, but maybe it would be, right? Any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. So not only, this is probably, if you're running this style deck, you're happy to have this because it's protecting your artifacts too. Speaking of tutoring for an answer, if somebody went to go remove something you love or exile it, you could pay your Boros, like we talked about earlier, and go in and find this thing, point it at yourself and say, you know what, while your mean spell's on the stack, I'm gonna actually do it. You didn't fire me, I quit. Whatever is potentially gonna get blown up or exiled or whatever is just gonna get shuffled back into your deck, and then hopefully it's not your commander. And then you got the mystery box from Call of Duty Nazi Zombies. Who knows what you're gonna get? You're gonna get a planeswalker, you're gonna get a sword, you're gonna get another creature. That's the fun of it, right? This is casual commander. You gotta keep these types of cards in there because when you tutor and it's all linear play, it becomes very boring, but I really love the RNG of it all. So this is fantastic. And if for whatever reason you don't have an answer in hand and this is all you got, you're never sad to see this thing until what comes out is like a Vorinclex or a Jin-Gitaxias, and then you're just like, why did I play Chaos War? But you know, you gotta take risks to get out. Next, I want you to know this card was cut countless times, but just to be one of the only streamers to say that they have built a commander deck with every single available sword of the Mirrodin and extended playsets, I added this in. Sword of Once and Future for 3 colorless to get on the field. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from blue and black. Now I know what you're thinking. Why are you crying and complaining about including this? It's really cool. It is. If you noticed, I don't really have too many instants or sorceries with value 2 or less from the graveyard, so that's kind of null and void as it is right there. But Surveil is a cool ability. I thought that it was you had to do something, but it basically gives you the option to look, and that plays into the blue ability where you get to see into the future a little bit. So being able to kind of filter through and look at things that you want to keep or don't keep is cool, but having protection from black and blue is just way cooler. So I'm actually not sad about this being included, and now I'm sure it will save my butt multiple times. This one is super fun, and I've been playing this card for a long time. Sword of Body and Mind. It is a 3-drop colorless. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and protection from green and blue, which I don't know if you know this, but some of the scariest creatures in the game are green. They're real big, and now they can't do anything. And blue is just, you're more concerned about the protection from somebody bouncing or doing some sort of combat trick with blue, or maybe even enchanting you. I actually thought about Imprisoned in the Moon. I'm pretty sure this would stop that. It doesn't have to be an instant or sorcery, and that's one of people's biggest handcuffs, to just turn you into a moon. They can't do that when this thing's on there. They'd have to turn this into a moon, which is nice insurance against getting turned into a moon. Weird argument to justify its inclusion, but let's go to the second part. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield, and that player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his graveyard. Dude, you get a wolf and you get to mill your opponent's cards? This is sick. What if they needed lands and then they don't have lands now, and now they're just kind of off tempo? Maybe they had like all their things they needed right on top, and now it's in the yard, and they're not playing a black deck where they want their things in their graveyard, and their deck just goes off if they have it in their hand. You've potentially disrupted them, though we hope it's not like a Gitrog opponent or something like Tassiger that would love that, and they'll tell you, they'll be sure to tell you thank you whenever this happens. And if that happens, that's okay, because you have your Constellation Wolf, and you know what you can do with the Constellation Wolf? You can give him a sword, and he looks like one of the Pokemon from Pokemon Sword and Shield, so I'm okay with this. Next, we have the Sword of Hearth and Home, and this is a 3-drop colorless to get it on the field, and then as we equip, it's gonna get buffed and pumped +2/+2 and has protection from green and white. That's really good. Again, protection from big creatures, and white has some big creatures, a lot of angels as well, but mostly you are happy that you have protection from that sweet Swords of Plowshare or Path to Exile with this thing. And whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card and put both cards onto the battlefield and then shuffle. So this is cool. You can flicker if for whatever reason you weren't packing vigilance, which I actually don't think I have too much vigilance in this deck. There's maybe a couple creatures that have it and then a couple equipments maybe if we're lucky. So I guess it would be cool to attack and then be able to untap this, and then if we have our nice enchantments out where we get to auto equip when it's done, you just untapped your attacker and now you can block and gain more life and do cool stuff, and you'll probably have protection, chances are, with all these swords that we have in here. So that's nice. And you get to ramp, so it's like Sword of the Animist a little bit. This one I'm excited for because I actually haven't used this yet. Sword of Forge and Frontier. So 3 colorless, and you equip creature gets +2/+2, the standard, but it has protection from red and green. Again, a lot of opponents will play green creatures that are tough, they can block your things, and they can't do that now when this is out. And also, they like to ping and blow things up with red burn damage, so that is not a suitable target for the creature that's equipped by this equipment now. And additionally, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You may play an additional land this turn. So some impulsive draw, some additional land play on the green side of the thing. Not bad. It gives you a little ramp. Imagine if you're playing those instants or sorceries that ramp on top of getting one of these triggers off in a combat phase, and you had a Sword of the Animist, you're sitting pretty. You just have to hope somebody's not going to blow up your land. That would be real sad. Now this one's probably the most interesting sword, and I didn't even know about it until recently. Well, this is a Sword of Wealth and Power for 3 colorless. It is an artifact equipment that will give your creature equip +2/+2 and has protection from instants and sorceries. Now, it doesn't stop from getting turned into a moon. That is unfortunate. This is another one of those positive control cards that it's a win more card. It's just, let's get this thing going. Let's get some insurance policies on these big creatures we're trying to build. And then the secondary effect is whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create treasure token, and when you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. We got Cloud making treasure tokens. We got the Reaver Cleaver potentially making treasure tokens. Am I missing any more treasure? I mean, that's a lot of treasure tokens in a turn potentially. I know it's not a copper dragon or anything crazy, but this could go wild. And then as far as your spells, maybe you would hope you get into a Kadama's Reach extra, or maybe not necessarily. That's the thing what I hate about these doubling spells and things. It's great for burn stuff and drain stuff where your opponents are dying, because you potentially could win off that kind of stuff. But if you're not building like a spell slinger deck, this is not really ideally what you want to have. But you know what? Darn it. This is all the swords, a Mirrodin and extended family deck, and everyone is welcome here. So this is getting in there. And I'm sure it'll do nice things. I believe in you. Sword of Wealth and Power. Don't fail me, please. Respectfully. Sword of Sinew and Steel. 3 colorless. And this will pump you up +2/+2 and has protection from black and red. I'm not gonna lie, anything I read after this is just a consolation compared to having protection from black and red. That's the true value in this card. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target planeswalker and up to 1 target artifact. Let's not lie, how many times has this blown up planeswalker? I think I've used it and blown up a planeswalker maybe twice in my life. I hope to add to that total. Well, you can reliably blow up an artifact, and I honestly can't even ask too much more than that. These swords are kind of greedy, so to think that both ever have to go off, I'm just okay if I get 1 planeswalker down, 1 opponent's OP artifact. Maybe they have a Sword of Sinew and Steel, and then they would ironically want to blow up my Sword of Sinew and Steel. Who knows what kind of crazy situations we can get ourselves into, but I'm happy it's on my team. Speaking of cards that I'm happy in my deck, Sword of Fire and Ice, a 3 colorless artifact, and it's going to add +2/+2 and give you protection from red and blue. I'm realizing I'm just going through the 5 colors and talking about how happy I am that I have protection from them. But if I had to talk about how many times blue has disrupted my plans, I sound like a Scooby-Doo villain. I would have beat you too if it wasn't for your blue instance. Whenever it triggers, equipped creature deals combat damage to a player. Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to target creature, and you draw a card. Or you could deal damage to a player. I love this. Some of the best creatures in the game are just a proxy enchantment in creature form. Their purpose is not to go kill. Sure, you can Voltron and go crazy, but really they just want to be out, and they're a squishy body, but they're providing some cool effect. So the fact that you can get rid of things like that, and I haven't encountered too many players that rely on things other than instant counter spells to defend those things. I rarely see anyone like myself slotting in multiple forms of redundancy for hexproof and all these other things to make their plans stick on the board, because they know that most powerful things are done from hand, and you can't ever rely on things sticking around. So we're trying to make magic happen here with our phasing out and all these Teferi's protection, but the fact that you can just ping off an opponent, sometimes 2 damage, is a tried and true method to just get things done. And you would be surprised how many very scary things are really not that tough, and all you gotta need to do to get rid of them is just directly ping them. So I love that. And we can get double triggers. We got a couple other things we talked about, right? Like that one cloud that does it. Sword of Light and Shadow. For 3 colorless, equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from white and black. Again, oh my goodness. Just the I would say these are the removal colors. You can ping, we were just talking about red, but red is that 3-headed dragon, the one with his tongue out that looks way too silly, and the other 2 dragons are looking at it. That's white and black when it comes to removal. So these are the 2 of 3 that are the powerhouse of removal, in my opinion. You have protection from them, and it's not even done yet. Whenever it triggers, you gain 3 life. We like that. And you may return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, we talked about recursion of artifacts, but we really don't have too much that is giving you creature recursion. There's the Sephiroth thing we talked about, and a couple other abilities that might be escaping me at the moment, but it's nice to be able to dig up some of those cool creatures. Like, what if I wanted Krenko out for 5 more turns? Not that you would ever really need them for that many turns, but you know, what if I did? I got this thing to bail me out. Speaking of swords that bail you out of bad situations, Sword of Feast and Famine. For 3 colorless, it is an artifact that will give you +2/+2 on an equipped creature and protection from black and green. With this one, I want to emphasize the secondary effect. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. Whoever made this, and I've heard some podcasts of people that were game designers for Wizards of the Coast and other different trading card games. Were you high when you made this? What made you think this was acceptable? This is dirty. But you know what? Voltron is underrated strategy, and we need all the help we're gonna get. So I'm gonna run this overpowered thing in here, and we're gonna run it all the way to the promised land. Next. Sword of Truth and Justice. For 3 colorless, it is a artifact equipment that will add +2/+2 and protection from white and blue. And whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on creature you control and then proliferate. And for those of you who don't know, with proliferation, you basically count up counters that you have and add another counter on top of what it was already there. Nice ability. Things that are doing +1/+1 counters care about this, and it's just nice to be able to get that going. It's because it's an engine, right? You start with the +1/+1 counters, and then you proliferate, and kind of like we were talking about Reese with the tokens, you start with an elf, and then you start populating, and the chicken or the egg, right? One of my favorite swords. Very underrated sword. Protection from white and red. Awesome art, by the way. This is probably, I don't know, is this the best art on a sword? I think it might be. But 3 colorless, and it gives you +2/+2 equipped creature, and it has protection from red and white. And whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to the player, Sword of War and Peace deals damage to the opponent equal to the number of cards in his or her hand, and you gain 1 life for each card in your hand. My goodness. I have got this thing off over 10 times, confidently, with over 10 cards in hand, and that's a lot to boost. I know it doesn't sound like it when they got big turns where players are dealing out 600 damage or whatever with Crater Hoof, but sometimes all you really need to do is just gain 10, 20 life, have 10 cards in hand, and then just ping off your opponent and just beat them down, you know? You got the top mount and you're just hammer fisting them. This is a very aggressive sword, and I love it because some of the other ones are just mid-rangey to me, and this is just all in us. Like, we are going for one big swing, and we're gonna hopefully gain ourselves a little bit of life to weather the storm and survive one more turn to close out. So I really love this card. We've almost made it to the end. And what card do you think is the last one that's not a land? It makes no sense, but it's awesome. Ugin the Spirit Dragon. First time running Mr. Ugin. I've only lost against him so many times. But an 8-drop, he's a little costly, but I don't think we had too much. I think we saved our money appropriately here when it comes to resources and keeping the overall cost in around a 3 or 4. I think we can swing this guy. So what he does, he's a planeswalker, one of the only dragon planeswalkers I have, you know. And +2, Ugin will ping something for 3 damage. And we just talked about how valuable that is. So he helps defend himself by getting rid of troublesome evasive creatures, which is nice. Or you can just piss off your opponent. And that's not advised, but I guess killing their creatures will piss them off too. The next part, this is wild. Exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less that's 1 or more colors. So you know when we go through the trouble of making all these rebel or soldier tokens or whatever, and they have a color attached, Ugin can just go, no, it's 0 cost this turn, is gonna die. And then, well, not die, but exile, effectively get rid of, right? It's worse. I think it's worse to get exiled. You already have a decent amount of loyalty, so if there's a bunch of creatures that cost 3 converted mana cost and you can track 3 loyalty, you probably already plus them to the first turn he came out. He's got plenty to defend himself. He's just fantastic. And if you can get Magic Christmas Land, you can pillar for it, and you got bigger problems than Ugin, which is hopefully the goal. He just slips in there. It's like, yep, I'm here too. But -10 loyalty, you gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and then put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. This is wild. In this deck, with how much we draw, we're probably going to be sitting on like 8, 9, 10 cards when we're really going off and we have no hand size. So this thing is going to draw you 7 on top of that. So you could be looking at 18 different cards. Sure, you might only have 10 cards left in your library because you're drawing so much with this deck. But what if we have some of the bigger, higher cost equipments or whatever we needed as far on the creature side of the house all come out on one big turn, and we have a lot of haste enablers, right? So very impactful, and again, gaining life is always good too. Bet you didn't think it'd be an Ugin, did you? For the rest of the deck tech, we'll see how this works out. Pray. I got 5 basic mountains. I got 6 forests. I got 7 plains. Very nice. Look at that Kamigawa art. Looks like Geonosis though. An exotic orchid. A cinder glade. Canopy Vista. This is a really cool one. Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. Each land is a forest in addition to its other land types. So not only did we have that chromatic lantern for some fixing, we got Yavimaya, and then also we hopefully just have a lot of plains out at the same time. So we have access to a lot of our creatures that are restrictive, to be quite honest with you. To have 2-3 pips of plains sometimes can be hard to get. So the fact that you have something that's providing you additional forests. Next, Reliquary Tower, probably my favorite land. I find it is the subject to land destruction, which is fair and justified, but it's just never fun. You're never fun to have your land blown up. But you have no maximum hand size. You hope to encounter this early in the game. If you do, it is the least likely of things to be removed. Not too many people pack land removal. Usually somebody's got 1, or you have a Beast Within, something that targets a permanent that doesn't specify non-land. Game Trail. Really nothing specific about this, but as this land enters, you may reveal land, so it's a show land. If you have it in hand, it doesn't have to be tapped. If you don't, it comes tapped. And same with this one, Fury Calm Snarl, and then same with Fortified Village. So they just took the different colors and gave you a couple options there. And then Clifftop Retreat, you just gotta have mountains or plains. Firelit Thicket, so this is apparently a decent amount of money, $15 card or something close to it, last time I checked. And it just gives you the ability to come in as a colorless if you need it, and then when you need to filter later to give you a little bit more, it's there. So I can deal with these ones. It's when it doesn't work on its own and it has to have a mana, those are the ones I hate. I think I cut that one, the one that came in the deck. Rootbound Crag, pretty cool art on that one. Rugged Prairie, there's another one of those. Comes down, you can use it immediately, maybe get a Soul Ring out if you're lucky, and then later when you have some variety of lands, you can fix it and filter it. Just another Sun Petal Grove, and we're coming in tapped unless you control what it's got, which is ironic, because a lot of times you don't have basics in 3-color deck. Evolving Wilds, just a classic card. We love searching for the basics. I love basic lands because they come in untapped, and there's a lot of things that are cheap that allow you to go look for them, and I appreciate that. and awesome art on this command tower. It looks very Final Fantasy VII themed with its industrial reactors, probably some sort of nuclear reactor. And then the last card of the deck tech. Everything fun has to come to an end. Rogue's Passage. Come on, man. Look at that. You got an inn. If you want to close out, this card has won me so many games. It just provides this awesome evasion on a land. And you know what else? Sometimes people will pop this thing before the Reliquary Tower, so it's like insurance for Reliquary Tower. But if they don't have an answer for that, target creature can't be blocked. What's better than that, right? I want to know what y'all think. I'm super stoked to play this. I think we're gonna have a separate video where I get some play footage, and I appreciate all of you stopping by Ravenwin Gargoyle Streams, and I love you all, and have a great night or day, whatever you choose it to be.